Hi, buddies. Welcome to another episode of Half-Bot Logic. Tonight's topic is feedback, or more specifically, how feedback is the modern day emperor's new clothes. I'm duper excited about tonight's episode because it's one of those really simple, obvious things, like the duck-rabbit illusion, where as soon as someone points it out to you, once you see it, you're like, wait, how did I not see this? And feedback systems are everywhere, so you'll start noticing it everywhere. It's like the blue car syndrome or the code in the matrix. And then you'll go through all your friends trying to find that one friend who hasn't seen it yet. Okay, so anyways, whether we're aware of it or not, we are straight consumed by feedback. We spend all day looping in and out of different feedback systems. We're giving feedback, we're receiving feedback, we're refereeing feedback. We play the judge, the jury, and the executioner. I mean, just think about it. Social media is essentially a gigantic feedback platform. Then there's Uber ratings, Amazon ratings, and I haven't even mentioned work yet. Businesses have their own universe of feedback infrastructures in place. There's the obvious employee to manager level feedback infrastructure. Many people think of this as their promotion level system. And then recruiters have their own feedback system, and HR often has multiple feedback systems in place. As a software engineer, there's the code review feedback systems, and at Google, there's the annual company-wide employee survey, Google Geist. Okay, have I made my point yet? So long story long, we spend all day looping these feedback systems, and feedback is universally hyped. And the narrative around feedback is overwhelmingly positive. And there's all this content out there, like how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how to handle negative feedback, and why negative feedback is actually a good thing. And yet virtually nobody is asking my favorite question, why? Why is it here? What is it for? Why are we even doing it? I mean, there's just so much of it, and that usually means that someone at the top wants it here and put it here and is quietly benefiting from it being here, while the rest of us sheep are just looping the feedback hamster wheel. So tonight on Half-Bot Logic, we will examine the uncomfortable truth about feedback and uncover who or what is benefiting and suffering from the feedback system, and find out the uncomfortable truth about how feedback is the modern day emperor's new clothes. So if you're looking for emotional coaching or hand-holding through the feelings of being critiqued or validation on managing your ego during a review, then this episode is not for you. But be sure to check out our sister podcast, Comfortable Lies. What happens when you coddle your kids? Participation trophies are for losers. Okie dokie, everybody ready? Uncomfortable truth, how feedback is the modern day emperor's new clothes. Okay, so this morning I woke up and I immediately clocked in for a full shift of digital jury duty. I mean, I had to clean the feed before I could get out of bed, of course. So there's been a recent monkey branching in our friends group. The guy openly straight Bezos the woman for someone else also in our friends group. It was super messy, super awkward. A lot of damage was done. But notice what happens next. And I hate to use the word predictable to describe such a personal and painful situation, especially when it's people that I personally care about, but I feel like I've seen this show before, and more than one time. So the new couple, the monkey branchers, basically go into the social media witness protection program, right? And of course, they only resurface for holidays and major events, so they can drop one perfectly curated life update photo together. Totes photoshopped, totes cash, totes so happy, just the two of us, and then they otherwise disappear. So what are the rules here? The rest of us in the friends group, it's a mandatory double tap as a symbol of neutrality, right? If you're silent or if you honestly miss it, it's almost not considered neutral, right? So when they do post, it circulates to the friends group like, hey, psst, 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 they posted, basically saying, hey, make sure you like their post, right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Just as you're giving a heart, you're thinking, okay, I'm not going to comment, so I'm staying neutral. They're still my friends. It's all good. All right, so the monkey branchers more or less disappear, at least at first, and the friends group, we're left to manage the pitiful dumpy. and their emotional state is now a problem for us. So we shift our focus and we overcompensate and gas her up. We make the numbers on all her low-res selfies go insane. The dumpy is clearly spiraling, and we are basically fueling those flames. Eventually, the dumpy is posting unfiltered, in the mirror, cringy, iPhone flash face selfies all day like she's got an hourly quota to fill. So, what the heck happened? Well, the friends group, instead of dealing with our anxiety and the truth, we were uncomfortable. So, we swept that garbage under the rug. We made reality disappear. We made everyone forget about the original problem, when in reality, we made everything worse. But most importantly, we made everyone smile and think that everything is fine. We used the feedback system to make everyone think that we fixed the problem. The feedback system is the modern day emperor's new clothes. So dealing with that drama left me running a bit behind, so I decided to splurge on an Uber Black. But this is San Francisco, so of course a zillion nonsensical traffic glitches and road closures funneled everyone into a massive stop-and-go bottleneck. Anyways, my Uber driver decides mid-ride that he doesn't want to go anymore, so he cancels the ride and tells me to get out. Hello, it's raining. And he starts making this ridiculous 88-point U-turn inch by inch with his massive SUV in the middle of a jam-packed, super narrow, barely 2-lane road. So the car is jerking back and forth as he continues to try to U-turn in the middle of the street, and it's slowly rotating in place. Everyone's honking at us. I look outside and it's pouring, and of course we're on one of those rare SF streets with no stores. So I just kind of freeze. I'm trying to stay as still as possible because I'm just kind of hoping his get out was, rhetorical. But unfortunately, he turns around, he looks me in the eyes, and he says it again. He's like, get out. So I'm like, can I please go back with you? And get this, the Uber driver's like, this is not an Uber. This is a private vehicle. Get out. And he had one of those Uber signs on his dash and he sees me eyeing it. He reaches over, he grabs it and he shoves it into his glove compartment. And I'm like, are you serious, bro? Okay, so I start collecting my stuff. I'm sort of moving in slow-mo because I'm trying to give him plenty of time to, tell me I can stay, obvi. So now the Uber driver has essentially gotten halfway through his U-turn. So the SUV is now perpendicular to traffic, sideways. So it's completely blocking both lanes now. The other lane, which wasn't blocked before, is now completely stopped. And they are just sitting on their horn, which is incredibly disorienting. So the SUV is sideways, mid-U-turn. So when I open the car door, I'm facing oncoming traffic. I feel like I'm the star of a Broadway show. It's Act 1, the curtains just swung open, a sea of eyes staring straight at me as far as I can see. And the car immediately in front of me suddenly stops honking. I mean, he's been sitting on his horn at a huge black SUV with blackout windows in the pouring rain, and the door just swung open. He was probably scared. But then he sees me and he knows I'm packing noodle arms under my jacket. Anyways, that gutter water on top of the car door just dumps right on top of my head. Plus the pouring rain, I'm like immediately drenched. And have you ever noticed that unlike the movies, it's really hard to look hot when you're wet? And that feeling when you feel bad for yourself? Oh my God, this is so much worse than the walk of shame. Okay, so I walk over to the other sidewalk. I don't really know this area of town, but I know it's not a safe area. But that's not really saying much because in San Francisco, every other block is quote unquote not a safe area. I know all the roads are blocked except for this one, and traffic is really bad and completely stopped in one direction. I don't really know what to do at this point. I think my only realistic options are to call another Uber and try to get back home or to start walking. So I'm standing there watching the Uber I just got out of finish turning his car around, and I just really cannot believe that he is actually going to leave me here. But at least it's daylight out because the last time I felt scared, the last time I felt my safety was compromised by a rideshare, it was dark out and I was alone. Okay, so firstly, of course, I always share my trips with my bestie as soon as I book them. But that doesn't really do anything for me because that's like triage, right? It's like after the fact, like that doesn't really help protect anyone, right? What I mean is, every time I book an Uber, I automatically share the trip with my bestie immediately after. And that action actually scares me because I feel like I'm sending them a link to where to find my body, you know? And I actually cancel rides if the driver's rating is too low or if they haven't completed enough rides. Anyways, the last time I feared for my safety in an Uber, the driver would turn completely around, like 180, while the car was full on moving, and he kept asking me these questions like, do you worship Jedediah and the trilogy of angels? Okay, like what the I'm like rolling down the windows. I'm frantically searching for hidden cameras because I'm like hoping it's a weird version of that Cash Cab show. And I'm like blacking out. I don't know if I should be more scared of crashing or this Steve Buscemi doppelganger or his asinine questions. So I'm like totes trying to act natch like, do you worship Jedediah and the trilogy of angels? Because, I'm obviously gonna go with whatever he says, right? And he's like, yes, of course. So I'm like, okay, same here. And he's like, good, because I was really worried that you didn't. Like, what the heck? So let me get this straight. This Uber driver seriously thinks that he happened to pick up the one other person on earth who also worships Jedediah and the trilogy of angels? This is unacceptable. So, anyways, when I reported this religious evangelist to Uber, Uber basically promised not to match me with a driver ever again. I tried to push my complaint up the chain, but I ultimately got nowhere except Uber's reassurance that they had logged my complaint. They basically told me that they don't do anything unless they get a certain number of complaints, at which point they'll look into it. Cool. Thanks, homie. All right, so back to my original story. I'm standing out in the rain trying to see if I can get another Uber to pick me up. So I've never had a driver cancel on me during the ride, and I don't know how normal that is, but I didn't realize until I opened the Uber app and saw the receipt and the rate your Uber ride pop up. Like, what? They charged me for the guy that just kicked me out? Like partial fare? Are you seriously smoking crack right now? This is the equivalent of cutting my hair only on the left side and then asking me to pay for half. F no. You've left me in a far worse position than I was in to begin with, not to mention the safety issues here. All right, but seriously, let's really evaluate the situation here. The requirements to become an Uber driver are incredibly low. You need a qualifying car, a smartphone, and you can't have a murder conviction. You can have a DUI or a violent crime, just not in the last 7 years, unless it's after you get approved. But everyone knows that you just need a clean person's driver's license, right? Because Uber doesn't require you to make any human contact, not even virtual. I mean, it's harder to become a notary than it is to become an Uber driver. It's harder to work at Starbucks. The list goes on and on. So beyond that, the only thing Uber uses to decide which of their drivers are dangerous is their feedback system. Just think about it, and it gets worse. They make their riders do all the work. They literally make their riders vet their drivers so they can keep their hands clean and they don't take any of the blame for their drivers' ratings. They essentially put the entire responsibility of safety on their users. They throw that garbage downhill onto their users. They use the feedback system to make everyone think that they've handled a situation they've done nothing about. The feedback system is the modern day emperor's new clothes. All right, shall we quickly examine feedback systems at work? Okay, so when I was at Google, we had annual performance reviews, right? And within them, we had to stack rank our own team, meaning rank our teammates from best to worst. As a software engineer, I've worked at huge companies and I've worked at small startups. And unless I'm by myself, teams are always, 3 to 5, 6 people. Any more than that, and that's a pretty big team. So, anyways, the stack ranking shenanigan, I remember it had your teammates' individual photos, and you literally had to drag and drop them into like a totem pole. Now, here's the problem with that. There was a time when I was on a 3-person team, which means I'm having to stack rank 2 people. I mean, as I dragged one of my teammates to that bottom rung, Google is forcing me to pick which of my teammates is the worst. That's clearly a game of who do you like the most? Who do you socialize with outside of work? Which of these don't belong? And I'm not going to get into being a minority in tech or anything like that right now, but my point here is, should someone complain that, say, women are promoted far less than male engineers, Google gets to point at their feedback system and say, hey, that's not our fault. We're a transparent democracy here. We measure apples to apples. Our rating system is calibrated by definition, and that person fell below par. Google's engineering promotion system presents itself as merit-based, but in practice, it's a peer-calibrated consensus system. Engineers are evaluated through packets, feedback, and calibration committees that rely heavily on comparative narratives, not absolute standards. This shifts judgment away from managers and onto peers, making promotion as much about legibility, fit, and sponsorship as about impact. The system reduces leadership risk by turning decisions into quote-unquote group agreement, which also makes it harder for outliers to advance. As a result, difference is quietly penalized, even when performance is strong. The real dangers lie in performative resolution. What I mean is, you know how you have to split your liquids into small 100 milliliter containers when you go on a plane? That law supposedly prevents you from making a bomb because I guess it takes 1,000 milliliters of bomb liquid to make a bomb. But that law doesn't make any sense because you're allowed to take 10 100 milliliter bottles. And also, you can have 10 friends on the plane and combine all your liquids together on the plane and make 10 bombs. It's just performative resolution. It's the emperor's new clothes. It's a smoke show, glitter party here to distract you and say, okay, we fixed it. When in actuality, it's causing more harm than not. It's taking resources away from what could be actual bomb prevention, and it gives people a false sense of security, and people unknowingly let their guard down, and ultimately people are left blind and vulnerable to the original problem. I think it was the early 2010s. I was at Google at the time. It was right before all the big companies first started releasing their diversity metrics. And Google, quote unquote, rebranded all the UX designers to UX engineers, obvi because there are a lot of women UX designers. And that totally skews the stats for women in engineering heavily in their favor. I'm a female software engineer, and I remember getting what I thought was a personal email from like the first female engineer at Google. And I was like, whoa, no way. But then it was like, hey, $100 spot bonus if you get your diversity consensus form in this week. Cool. Thanks, homie. Google has the resources to make a difference, and they're probably one of a handful of entities that actually has the means to do so. But instead of actually doing something, anything about discrimination and the wildly skewed demographic within tech, or instead of trying to innovate some way of promoting based on actual merit, they sweep that garbage under the rug. They throw all of that responsibility downhill onto their employees. They point to their feedback system and claim that it's out of their hands. It's incredibly disappointing. They use their feedback system to make everyone think that they've handled a situation they've done nothing about. The feedback system is the modern day emperor's new clothes. All right, so just before this episode, I was on Amazon. I was looking for those little clear stickers that you put on your kitchen cabinet doors, so they don't slam when you shut them. And there are literally a zillion different options. So how the heck am I supposed to choose? That's right, the feedback system. It's literally the number one criteria I use to filter down my options. I mean, think about it. Those bumper stickers are just a couple of bucks, right? And many of them had 1,000 or more reviews. So there's no way I'm going to choose one with only 3 reviews, right? Even if I have to pay a few more bucks. In fact, there's no way I'm going to choose one with even 100 reviews. I mean, I feel terrible about it because I understand it's like the new grad dilemma. You can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience without a job. But I can't compromise the integrity of my bumper stickers. Who knows what's going on over there at the Scammy bumper sticker factory with only 100 reviews? And Amazon clearly does not want to play favorites, and they don't want to help you decide whatsoever. I mean, just think about it. Have you ever noticed that the search, sort, and filter on Amazon doesn't really work quite right? Like, you try to filter by next day delivery and 4 stars and up, and the results are just garbage? Yeah, that's not an accident, people. Sure, some of their items carry the Amazon choice tag, but come on, that tag is a total joke. That tag is like LinkedIn endorsements. That's why they bury it with that tiny font and neutral coloring. It is so inconsistent. Sometimes there's no Amazon choice, sometimes there's multiple Amazon choices. It is totes my goats nonsense. Yep, these are not accidents. Amazon isn't a struggling company with bugs they can't afford to iron out. Amazon doesn't want to play favorites. Amazon doesn't want to deal with their customers complaining or suing them, so they sweep that garbage under the rug. They throw all of that responsibility downhill onto their customers. They point to their feedback system and claim that it's out of their hands. They use their feedback system to make everyone think that they've handled a situation they've done nothing about. The feedback system is the modern day emperor's new clothes. So the next time you're bed rotting, looping in and out of feedback systems all day long, just think about what you're really doing, who you're really covering for, whose garbage you're really carrying. Think about the uncomfortable truth. They used to call me robotic and nerdy as if it were a bug, but then LLMs came along and suddenly everyone is learning to speak my native tongue. Until next time, stay curious and don't be afraid of the uncomfortable truth.